That's all good, we're good. Alright.
Good?
Alright, good evening to everyone. Call the December 3rd City of Mount Vernon Council meeting to order. Not aware of any changes to the agenda that we have in front of us.
So I move approval of the agenda is presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Lucky.
Deb.
Oh.
Deb, don't.
Well, since I wasn't appointed, I didn't know I was supposed to remind people, so we're gonna pin that in.
Yep, yep.
Okay.
Tom's the same way.
Over
This
here.
whole style. Oh my God.
Busted.
Rookies.
Hey, I did my work.
That's right. Yeah, this is her second meeting.
That's funny.
Overachiever.
Yeah, but she didn't have hers hijacked like mine, I did.
How was that? Sure.
Alright, we all set?
Yeah.
Alright, well, we'll move on to communications. I assume it's probably safe to assume nobody's going to address the council unless Chief has something
I'm good.
that he would like to bring forward. Alright, we will then move on to the consent agenda. Approval of council minutes from the November 19th meeting. Appoint Deb Herman to the Personnel and Finance Committee. And appoint Peter Alt, and somebody's gonna have to help me with first names.
Michelle.
Is it just Michelle?
Yeah, I think so.
Miss
Michelle?
Pelkey, I believe.
What's that?
Miss Pelkey.
Miss Pelkey to the Historic Preservation Commission. I have never seen Michelle spelled that. Is that matter?
Mhm.
I would move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is ordinance number 1115-2018A, vacating and selling the north-south 16-foot alley right-of-way adjacent to 906 and 824 Summit Avenue Southwest, Mount Vernon, Iowa. Chris, I assume probably nothing to add to this?
Nope.
We haven't heard of anybody from anybody.
I take a motion then to approve the second reading of ordinance 11-15-2018A.
And second.
Any comments? No comments? Roll call, please, Sue.
Weisler,
Yes.
Rose,
Yes.
Rodebush,
Yes.
West,
Yes.
Herman. Yes.
Move on to motions for approval. First item is consideration of claims list. Everybody should have an updated copy in front of them. Entertain a motion, unless anybody has any questions.
I move approval of the claims list as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, discussion and consideration of change order number 1, Lester Burrish Family Community Wellness Center. Chris?
So this change order is in front of you because it could reach 22,000 or roughly in the neighborhood of 22,000. We expect it to be far less. The area in question would be the northwest corner of their property, or not quite the northwest corner, but if you go from the northwest building corner to the parking lot, there's this oval and what would be the proposed second addition of the pool, where we have these wet clays. So the current plan is to have Braun Intertech on site while this is being excavated. We're only planning to excavate underneath the building and underneath the parking lot. And the area where the future pool will be will not be touched, simply because if we were, then we would have to pull all that fill back out when we put a pool in. So there's really no point in excavating 3 feet and bringing that back. So we're expecting a number far less, but I didn't know if it was going to be over 10,000. The top dollar number, or the top proximity, if they did 3 feet of that entire area, is 22,000. So at this time, I just wanted to let you know change order number 1 is coming. I don't know the dollar amount, but it should be less than $22,000.
And disappointing to have a change order already.
Right, that was,
I know.
that was, as I was reading through the agenda.
How do you-
Well,
And you knew it would come, but still,
That
you know.
doesn't surprise me one bit.
we knew, you know,
Especially that
the
area.
The issue that we have in this scenario is, unless you go back and we took 5 core samples, is all we took on an entire site, so, there was a kind of a minor expectation that we would run into something like this, but, not unexpected, especially at the dirt work. I would be more disappointed if we were already a building going up and we had something of this nature, but, I would be asking more questions of the architect at that point.
Is there a set, like, when there is a change order, is there a set fee for each change order?
So we have a cubic yard price on this change order, but
No, I mean, there's, when I was a project manager, whenever there was a change, there was like $100 or $150 just because there was a change, they're not relating to anything that was going on. There isn't anything like that in this, okay? Because some of them do that, and I was just hoping that wasn't the case.
No.
Okay.
Somebody explain to me, what does it mean to have the wet to water bearing clays? It has something to do with the way it settles or won't settle, or?
it will settle. So if you start putting weight on that and it gets wet, then it will start to settle. So they excavate that material out and bring what they call engineered fill, usually gravel of some sort, that they will come back in and compact, and it's a more stable base. It's not doing any harm, obviously, under the grass, but once you start putting weight on it, then you run the risk of, if it stays dry, if we were Arizona, it would be fine.
Two reserves in there.
But knowing that,
Big solid
yeah,
line.
knowing that we're in Iowa and the chances are that it would be wet, there's no sense in risking it. The other portion to this is, there is a portion that we already know about that we have to over excavate and bring in a lot of fill. And they're actually doing plate testing. So they basically put a plate down and then put the fill on. They're worried about the soil underneath the fill. So when you bring in a lot of fill, you're putting a lot of weight on that existing soil. So they're probably about 2.5, 3 weeks where those plates will be sitting there, and they'll be testing the movement there as well. So not necessarily out of the woods, but they did have more expectation there from a dollar process, so we shouldn't have necessarily a change order. What it could do is affect the time frame. So if the plates are still moving after 3 weeks, you know, that original 30-day window could be 45 days. So there's some things that we'll have to kind of work around, and this is why I haven't given a drop dead date on opening, and I am refraining from doing that because I don't want to set expectations. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's smart.
Way too early.
Isn't that the corner where most of the water is gonna drain towards too, from the side?
The northwest corner is where will be the low point. It kind of goes into, actually just on the other side of our property, what we share with the school, it goes right into that detention area, but yes.
So it'll always be wet.
Well, and this, what they believe is this used to be an old waterway too that just got filled in
Yeah,
at some point.
definitely came through.
Oh, yeah, there used to, I
Came
remember
through
in
the-
high school, there used to be.
Yeah, right through the track.
Yeah.
It's bad.
So,
There's a lot of fill there.
so not completely unexpected, but with 5 core drilling, it, you know, you're hoping. And really, if you look at the oval, it just kind of nips the parking lot and the building. Again, they won't know until they actually excavate it out to make sure that that's the extent of it, but a majority of it is where the pool would be at some point in the future should you decide to go that route.
So is there any action required in this, or this is just a heads up?
Now we need a motion
You need a motion,
Okay.
at least to give,
to approve up to.
Approve
Yeah.
up to
you know,
22.
and I would say it, between 22 and 25 would be the top right now.
In that case, I move approval of change order number one, approximate change order amount up to $22,880.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, discussion item, possible budget CIP communication. Chris?
So all I really wanted to do tonight is, I did have a presentation to my staff. I haven't exactly figured out how to put this presentation into, I'm trying to potentially put this into a PowerPoint. We have an actual budget PowerPoint that I do in February, but we've never done a PowerPoint on the CIP itself. So once it kind of gets to a point where we've determined numbers, what you see is kind of what we've got to as far as how the projects have been prioritized thus far. Obviously, your state and federal mandates, then your council goals, board/commission recommendations, and your citizen requests come from both you and the boards, and then of course staff priorities. So everything that you see on there has filtered its way through kind of those 4 criteria. And then, obviously, your current council goals are there. So, outside of the wellness center and the quiet zone, there wasn't a ton of direct correlation to the CIP. But then I went back and showed my staff from a funding mechanism what that means. And I really, again, continue to hit home on this tax increase. It would be significant, to do a large project would be a significant tax increase, and I think we're trying to avoid that. Of course, for me, the franchise fee is still a question mark. I'd love to give you better numbers. I still think the numbers are higher than what Alliant was giving us, but until we have had a solid year of numbers that we can count on, I don't want to say there's going to be 250,000 when there might only be 200,000. I can tell you that the parks are prioritized in a manner that if the franchise fee money comes in the way that we expect it to, we'll cover those projects. So what we've done is, I've stated to both Matt and Nick that my priorities would be, for instance, for Davis Park. Those projects won't start until the spring of 2020. That way we know how much franchise fee money that we're going to actually have, and we don't start a project that we can't necessarily pay for with cash. So we've done some prioritization inside these projects based upon the available funding and when they come in. I did, my number one franchise fee project has been the quiet zones, simply because I've heard the most about that, both from the council and then obviously citizen requests. So there is currently about $57,000 in franchise fee payments. We'll get at least 2 more quarters by the time this fiscal year starts. That project won't get started until the summer as it is. We have to try and figure out whether or not we would coordinate. We can't do the quiet zone and the wagon pass at the same time because the detour goes across those railroad tracks. So we have to do some coordination on these projects, and then that question hasn't been fully answered. I do not want to necessarily wait on either project, but the quiet zone to me is the one that's a little bit more tedious or tenuous, because the railroad can change engineers, and the next engineer coming in can do what this current engineer is doing. So I think if we get the approval to do the quiet zone, we move that project first,
Yeah.
and then worry about detouring people off of the wagon pass area.
Are we solid on that number for the quiet zone?
Yeah.
That was, 'cause I mean, that
No,
could-
but we are, so that was kind of the original budget number to put the medians in, and then it jumped up to
200,000.
almost 200,000 because they wanted us to put that early warning detection system in. Turns out that system's already there, So I won't have a solid number until the updated report comes back from Quiet Zone Technologies. That's who's working on updating the report for us for the railroad.
So the 75 came from, I'm assuming, that early warning being about 125,000, or?
Yes.
Okay.
So the warning detection system was, if I remember correctly, not quite double
Yeah.
what the project and putting the medians in.
Okay, gotcha.
So, but apparently that's already in place, so we will find out for certain. If not, obviously that changes the conversation point, and then you have some, the wagon pass and the bridge have to be done. We have engineering reports
Right.
that state that they're deteriorating and we need to pay attention to them. So if the number on the wagon pass jumps significantly in one direction or the other, my assumption right now as a staff member would be that the parks get put on hold and the money from franchise fee would increase for the wagon pass. But like I said, everything kind of plays off itself, and we've strategically done this in a manner that we don't pin ourselves into a hole in the spring of 2020, so.
But ultimately, it comes down to a need versus a want.
Correct.
Mhm.
Yeah, the quiet zone is nice, but it's not a need. And we have more pressing items. Anybody have any questions? Chris?
I like the idea of the electronic read or the radio reads on the water meters, but I've been picking up in the media, and I'm not sure the science is about this, but is there any health dangers with this radio read system?
So
Or what's the innuendo I'm picking up here and there? But
I haven't heard about health issues. It's a low frequency radio that's actually on the outside of the home. So there's the new meter would go in, and then there is a sensor that actually is placed on the exterior of the home, and that's what's read. There are two forms of radio read. The more expensive of the two would be to put an antenna on the water tower and maybe most likely in Mount Vernon, probably one other location. And it would take active reads every 15 minutes if we wanted it to. And there would be zero need for us to have to physically go out and manually read meters. The second is less expensive. It is a truck-mounted antenna system that you can drive through the community in probably an hour or two, as frequently as you wanted to. We would probably only do it weekly. The advantage of going to the full radio read is the leak detection, setting alarms. For us, you could still do some leak detection with the drive-through system. Just depends on how fast you did it, and then how fast, once you put it in the system, you could alert yourself to major increases.
So this, that would be the other question that I would have, is once we gather the data, I got to assume that these also come with appropriate software that can, or no?
Yeah, it's an expense.
Okay.
That's where you have to be careful with the program or system that you're going to. There are some that I've heard horror stories about proprietary software, and we're doing our best to refrain from that. But there are 4, maybe 5 large companies doing this. But one meter company, for instance, is hooking up with Verizon. Never would have imagined, a million years imagined Verizon getting into the water meter. But they already have the infrastructure in a lot of communities, so.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So yeah, it's been an interesting process. The other part to this, we still have debt on the treatment plant. So it's not that I don't, I really want this project to move forward, but I really don't want to spend $500,000 that we don't have right now. We're about ready to take $1.6 million in on the UV disinfection. So it's a priority for me, but I do believe that giving the ability to write off dollar amounts, even the small percentage that we do, should lessen the burden a little bit. But unless that happens significantly or a number of times where it's starting to cost us on the other end, that might push that up. But I'd love to get there. I just don't know that from a monetary standpoint right now that we have the ability to.
So speaking of other expenses, if we moved to this, are there, I know we have two, or at least I believe we have two people in the water department right now, right? Are there any, do we then continue to need two people? Or how does that factor?
You always need a backup.
Yeah.
So for our licensing for both sewer and water, we always have to have a listed backup. Now, I do have people inside Public Works that are getting trained as well. I don't believe that we'll ever lose a staff person simply because we're short-staffed as it is. I would say this to you. My expectation is if we ever lost Nick or Alex, vice versa, that we would likely go to one person in charge with two superintendents. And that superintendent would then be in charge of water sewer, and we would have a backup on staff. Either it would be whoever was in charge or somebody that's working on Public Works staff as well. So I do see some changes. They're not worth trying to implement now because the system isn't necessarily broken, but I think we can be a little bit more efficient moving forward in the future. So to answer your question, I don't see us losing anybody. The reallocation of duties might be.
And that's kind of what I expected the answer to be, so, yeah. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Chris, is that good?
Yes, I just, we had some typos and some numbers were not transcribed correctly, so this is the newest version, especially in Davis Park. So you'll see, if you look at your last one, that those numbers were larger. So.
Good. All right, we'll make sure to keep moving around, move along, we have time for just a short time. So in terms of anything from reports, anybody have anything? Mayor doesn't, council committee? Nothing? No?
Still some fundraising happening with the Burrish family daughters, if you will, and I'm continuing with that, and I'll let you know when I have some couple of results. CDG's on this week with it.
Chris, anything you want to highlight from your report?
No, just to point out though that I'm still working with Greg. We've kind of narrowed it down to 2 Wednesdays when we're going to try and hold a joint open house at the school for the neighbors about the construction. Nothing significant has happened yet. A lot of earth moving back behind the high school. So out of my reports, that's the biggest thing. The second would be the doors are upgraded, so we all have a key fob system. The current plan, because they're open during the day, we just flip a switch, is to not necessarily issue a bunch of these key fobs. If you have a desire or need as a council person, you can either speak to the mayor or myself and we can issue one. The whole premise behind getting rid of the keys is that we have keys all over the place, and so we're trying to limit. We can shut cards off, we can do a lot of things with the system that we have now, but it is operational and there's going to be some changes made to doors and will be completely transformed.
I figured, Thomas, you were right across the street. I mean, if you ever need, do something in my absence. I mean, if you feel like you need something, let me know. Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, well, I just want to make a public comment. I'm not happy about the leaf situation. I've talked to you about it, but I just want it stated publicly that, a contract is a contract. I understand when equipment, it fails, but we need to have a plan B in place. And I'm hoping that, next fall, when we look at us doing more of that work, we're going to resolve this situation because northwest side for sure was better toward the end of last week, but the more I walked around, the more I saw that the avenues were cleared, the streets, 3rd Street and 4th Street were not. you know, and our citizens deserve to have that stuff taken care of. They've had it out there in some cases for 4 weeks. Those leaves have been sitting out there, so.
Yeah, I saw the truck broke down. When did I send you a text? Was it Friday?
There was a vacation and a breakdown.
Yeah.
The way the contract is stated, they give us 6 weeks. It doesn't say 6 continuous weeks, it doesn't say anything specific, it just says 6 weeks, which he has done. It just hasn't been continuous, and one of the issues that we see is the contract says leaf pickup, we don't dictate how they pick them up. We operate brush pickup on a quadrant system. It works, people get used to it. I will say this, the expectation is for us obviously to take the leaves over next fall. You're still going to get complaints. My hope is that we'll be able to resolve those complaints in a more timely manner with the operation under city control versus on a contract basis. So I can't claim breach of contract if they haven't really breached anything, but I can, and we were discussing this before we came down, the disappointment is there are also our garbage hauler.
Yeah.
We have a short contract with them, which makes it a little bit more difficult to want to extend that contract with the services that were potentially being provided. So that's my frustration in all of this. Obviously, I fielded a number of calls myself, so I've got frustration beyond that, but I'm anxious, and right now we are on schedule. The property is surveyed. We're ready to close on the ground. We talked to Lynn County about upgrading the road, front road for us to get to the property. So the wheels are in motion there. So we're still kind of on schedule to take it over next fall. And the biggest question mark that I've got going forward is if we get a major leaf fall, it's the back and forth when we go to dump. You know, how quickly all of that's going to take place. But and the money that we do save, the expectation is to hire a couple seasonal employees so that we're not taxing that staff to do this all the time. We might have one operator and then a couple people. We have done some test run, which is good because our machine needed some modifications. And so, you know, obviously I think myself and our staff share the frustration. The early snowfall, definitely.
So we're still picking up leaves?
There's
I had an
supposed,
email today that said that we
they're
have.
supposed to be done tomorrow or Wednesday.
There's a lot left to do.
So we will see.
Yeah.
Like they usually do.
No, not at all. That's usually when it breaks down. I mean, it's probably we've had for years. I mean, it's the same piece of equipment and it breaks down all the time.
That was one, you said you had two.
Do you have another item?
You have another?
Oh. No, sorry, I must have misspoke.
No, I didn't, I just
I
wanted to
didn't-
make sure.
The leaves so enraged her.
It was the
Doubly
leaves
mad.
and the leaves.
She's doubly mad.
In the 3 years that I've been here, this is I fielded the most complaints obviously this year.
And some of it is the equipment, some of it is weather. I mean, we have to accept that, but yeah, it is.
The lack
it has
of
been
a set schedule has been the biggest complication that
Right.
I have dealt with. And, you know, it is difficult when you just stop and then start back from the start.
And especially, you know, when we tell our citizens, this is when they're gonna be picked up, and we're trying to get them to work on a schedule, you know, and to get them out there.
And I'll take some slack for it, but there's also quite a few individuals that wait till the last
Well,
minute
yeah, there's,
to rake their, you know, to do their yard once.
Well, and we do, I mean, we have caught, obviously, I haven't asked him to videotape, but I have physically been following him and watched people rake as soon as he drove by.
Like, oh,
And then, you know, those same individuals have called City Hall and said, he missed me.
yeah.
It's very unusual for me to go out and see one property that has leaves and think that you just missed that property. Typically, it's the entire street.
Yeah.
And I will say from experience, because I mulched mine, but all of my neighbors had their leaves out there, and they had them out there for 2.5 weeks for sure. So,
Yeah, one of the neighbors is coming to talk to me.
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, let's take a quick little break here. Let Bob have the floor.
For closed session, do we do the marks? No, we don't do, yeah.
It's not done.
Tom has to leave this in.
I'm asking
He's okay to go, as long as we make note that he has to leave.
I'm looking
Just make that
around.
the
to see
record
who's
here.
ready.
Okay.
You're good, when you leave,
Is
just
what?
wait to,
No.
does the record, just show how you exited.
Would you rather be at the bank holiday party than?
Stick around a little bit.
I know, I accidentally walked in on their party.
What's that all about?
You know, Baker's not, you know Baker's not at a party when they have it on.
Oh, yeah.